Welcome back to the Talos of Tech podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just me and Mike today. We got rid of everybody who said offensive things, who didn't talk enough about the Apple Reality Pro. It's just the enthusiasts now. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. I'm in a totally different area for those that are watching the video portion of this podcast.
Yeah, every week you're somewhere else.
Yeah,
You're
what was
gone,
it? I think the first week that
office.
I had this, or that we were using the laptop for the podcast, I was out on a little deck that we have. And then
That's right.
after that, then I was in the office, as you can maybe tell because of all the white walls. Now I'm in another white wall room, but now there's like panels on the side. So hopefully if you heard any sound issues last week, it should sound a little bit better with, I guess, better acoustically with some sound dampening objects with like a bed right here and the panels and all that. So hopefully
MacBook Air mic.
MacBook
It's not that bad.
It's running off of a M chip with an M guy. Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
Oh,
well,
geez.
Speaking of, we should have, at the time of recording this, it is only 1 month to go till WWDC.
You're right. We're coming
And then
really
we
close
should
to this Apple event that we've been waiting for like a year at this point, because it seemed
There
like
hasn't been any other Apple events
it's been
since
a long drought.
September?
Probably.
Oh my
I
God.
think so.
Was it the iPhone event? Yeah, because there was all these site refreshes for the iPads. That wasn't really an event, but they filmed a little mini event, I guess.
Well,
So,
like two of them, right? There's like 2 different or 3 different
Right.
videos that they published. Yeah.
It looked like they broke it up. It was like they started filming one and then changed their mind. They were like,
Let's just make 2.
Like, do you think that's when do you think it's acceptable to because really the only difference now, because sometimes we'll wake up and they just drop a 20-minute presentation on the new MacBooks or a 10-minute presentation on the new iPads. So I guess really the only difference is announcing it beforehand. Because these are, even WWDC is still a pre-recorded keynote, right? So the difference is, when do you send out invites versus just drop it? Like, what justifies
I think that's something that Apple's been experimenting with for the past 3 years now, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So they've been trying to figure out like what is that margin that they have to operate in that yields the most interest and the most sales.
I'd be so curious to see that data. Like, what gets more watch time, or like what garnishes more clicks on social media if we send it. I assume sending out the invite generates more hype, right? Because you have a week-long process of speculation just for all of our disappointment on the actual day. Like,
I think what their biggest
none of it's real.
Benefit is that you've got people like us who are interested in Apple, who are tech enthusiasts, and will actually spew out all the information to our significant others, our friends, family, and all that, saying like, there's an Apple event coming, and they're like, who cares, and all that. But like, there's all that hype beforehand from tech enthusiasts to the general public, but the general public isn't as tuned in. But then it's afterward when like the advertisements start coming through with like the yellow iPhone animation person guy throwing it everywhere. I'm so tired of that animation at this point. I see it everywhere. I'm tired.
It's not good. I don't like the style.
It doesn't sell me on anything. All it is just, oh, here's a yellow iPhone. Come and get it.
That's how somehow you captured the accent of that animated figure. That's how they speak.
I don't know.
I don't get it either.
At least with like the aftermath of WWDC being like advertisements for a new product is something I'm looking forward to, at least, but also the announcements that they make there too. But what was I trying to get? So you have people before the event hyping it up who are tech enthusiasts, and then afterward you have Apple advertising it out to the general public. So at least like them playing around with like, when do we tell the tech enthusiasts when it's happening, and like how much
because the tech enthusiasts, I've always described it like we're in the hype business. That's really what we do. Like, before events, we generate hype, we get excited, we speculate on what could happen, or in the past I covered leaks and rumors. Here's what could happen, here's what the rumors are suggesting. Once the event is over, we try to build hype for pre-order date or delivery date, and then we get the product a lot of the time. Get hyped! It's here! Unboxing! Oh my god! It's time! It's just this is just riding waves essentially. This is what these tech community does. But what I think Apple potentially banks on is when they send out invites and we speculate like we do now, they get to benefit all without taking any of the moral responsibility of clickbait.
Right.
Apple Reality Pro, Apple Glasses, new Mac Pro coming. This is confirmed to launch at the and we really don't know what we're talking about. That's what the leak community has taught us all these years. We really don't know.
I think that's what helped with you is like you're in the business of speculation, so all of the leaks and talks behind the scenes of like what's probably coming kind of fit well with like how you covered things on YouTube and all that. Both your adherence to it now with like not wanting to do cover leaks, it's now just like, all right, well, there might be an action button, we don't know, but like it's not like every single week of like, well, the action button's actually gonna be shaped like a circle, kind of like the iPhone 5 or 5S and all that, and then well, actually, no, it's going to be a little bit more of a squircle, so it's like rounded off square and all that. Well, now it's actually a rectangle, word. Just a solid rectangle. Like,
where do you fall on that? I don't know if I ever gauged your question. Like, I'm still on the fence, so I'm gauging people's opinion. I ran polls on it and stuff. Like, basically, what encouraged me to change my coverage of rumors and leaks was there was like 5 reports in a row that all back-to-back contradicted each other. It was like, they're going to have solid-state buttons. No, they're not. iPhone 10 is getting iOS 17. No, it's not. Or iPad's going to have OLED. No, it's not. Or, it's going to have Final Cut. No, it's not. And they, back-to-back, I felt so much whiplash from the leaks that, or the other one was the Apple's canceled their external monitor, the new Pro display. And then the next day it was like, actually, they're still doing it. It just might come out later. It was like, I felt wrong covering it. I started to feel icky because I was like, I just put out a video explaining here's what the rumors are, here's what Apple's likely plans are, because Ross Young was reputable and everything. But then a day goes by and the report all changes. So I'm capitalizing off of someone who may be telling the truth, but it's also impossible to know if they're telling the truth because they have so much to profit and gain from making stuff up now.
Sure.
Or if not making stuff up, they have so much to gain from being gullible to any source. Like, we don't know exactly which sources all these so-called leakers are hearing from. But in the case of the iOS 17 report, it was like the same site was citing 2 different sources and saying both are reputable and both are disagreeing with each other. And I was like, it's essentially the same as just saying you don't know and you've heard either way, but capitalizing on both. So I was like, I feel icky about this. So I want to start like trying not to cover them if possible. Like, try to just focus on what has been announced, what is real. Let's talk about existing hardware. Let's talk about the secondhand market, or let's talk about announcements that are official, and speculate, but maybe hold less weight into the leaks or rumors. Do you think it's worth documenting those at all? Or do you think it's worth just ruling them out and saying they don't know what they're talking about for the sake of honesty? Or
it's tough, especially when it's kind of ingrained with your business on YouTube as a content creator. Because in one way, you need to make a video for at least once a week on the schedule that you're at. Like, one a week would be like bare minimum. It makes sense to cover something, if anything. But when it's all filled with just like, well, you like speculation, but it's kind of like the bad side of speculation of like people profiting off of it, whether you like it or not. Right. So whether you
there's a difference between speculating and someone saying this is what's going to happen.
Right.
Where someone told me at Apple this is going. Now it's deceptive. Speculation inherently isn't deceptive.
My buddy told me that the iPhone 16 is going to actually be squared off, but with like a rounded front edge, and it's now got 3 cameras on the front for this specific reason and all that. Like, it doesn't really serve
lying
anything.
Versus speculating.
So it's tough. I think you're definitely put in a weird position of like, you want to, and especially your audience is interested in it, whether you like it or not, like you'll still garner that interest in your content. It's just morally,
Mm-hmm.
do I really want to put myself in that position of like this this doesn't seem right, and it's tough. I think a good balance is something that you mentioned, I think in that live stream or the video or whatever, of like you cover them from time to time, but I think it's good
Mm-hmm.
to just base it off of what you think will probably come out on top as like, yeah, that, or maybe not come out on top, but like what sounds most realistic for that product.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course you've been covering them for a very long time. You've been interested in Apple, maybe not your whole life, but most of your life. So at least
Yeah,
you've got some
definitely.
inclination on maybe what they're thinking. So I think
Mm-hmm.
you of any people would be more than uh, suited for that filtering job of like, here's all the information, here's what will actually like come through the filter, and that you can make a video on that makes sense, that may stand the test of time of like, yes, I'm glad I made that video because it teed up this feature that we saw with iPhone 15 or whatever. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
like, I think being selective is the way to go. So
Okay.
I don't think extremely like just putting a brick wall saying no one gets to enter anymore with all the
Yeah.
leaks or opinions is a good idea.
Because there have been some accurate leaks.
Yeah.
It's we
Yeah.
got to acknowledge not all of them are true, but there have definitely been true ones.
Exactly. So I think just being a little bit more selective is the best way to do it. Cutting cold turkey is tough because that puts your
Mm-hmm.
business in a tricky situation, puts yourself in a tricky situation, and sometimes it's good to challenge yourself, but cutting off that whole entire aspect of your channel is gonna it's gonna be a challenge and a half that might not be necessary, especially when your channel's already built on speculation. So it only makes sense to, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
look at the leaks and all that, whether they're actually true or not, but be a little bit more nitpicky with, yeah, that makes more sense. No, that doesn't make any sense. And if it turns out that maybe you just chose wrong, you chose the wrong marble, and it turns out that
Uh-huh.
marble that you didn't cover, or I guess that marble of
Mm-hmm.
information is what I'm trying to uh,
Yeah.
equivalate equate
That's
to each
cool.
other. uh
Tailosive word of the week.
Equivalate. But what am I trying to get? Yeah, if you end up not covering a leak that actually turned out to be true, oh well, it's now just new
Mm-hmm.
content that you get to talk about later. um but at least this way you don't feel scummy when like every single day a new report comes out that contradicts a previous report. uh and this way it makes your conscience feel better because you have an inclination of where Apple's going, and if that inclination was correct, or at least that
Mm-hmm.
perception was correct, then awesome. At the end of the day, you delivered good content and you're pretty good at your prediction, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't feel scummy.
That's the goal.
Versus, yeah. So I think there's a balance. I think like everything, whether it's bank account balance or
mm.
life balance with stress, mental, and all that. I think this is just another
Yeah.
one of those teeter totters that you have to figure out how to shift the masses in, so that way you feel
Sure.
good, but also you're still covering things and you don't feel icky at the end of the day of like, cool, I just sold everyone on a video idea that Apple is making a snail for their next product. The eye snail or something like that.
Snail. You could see an air tag with the little eyes poking out.
That'd be nice, or like a nice little snail sticker on the AirTag. Has
Snail
anyone ever
pod.
thought about that? Like putting stickers on AirTags? I never thought about that until just now.
You
Of
could
like
engrave them. I kind of
accessorizable.
keep forgetting air tags are a thing half the time, to be honest.
I did too until I
But
drove my truck the other day. We have an AirTag in the truck just in case because it's not as smart as the
mm,
Tesla that we own. And
yeah,
I didn't bring my phone. I think I went somewhere without my phone for the first time. And it
yeah.
the AirTag just kept on letting me know that it's in there. I'm like,
Keeps
I know
yelling
you're in
at
here.
you.
Please stop. I know that you don't sense a phone nearby, but you're sensing movement, so you're going to be extra loud because it's like, hold on, you're carrying around a tracking device. But what am I trying to get? It would be
That happened
nice.
to me on my road trip a couple weeks ago. I kept getting pop ups on my phone that AirPods Pro are traveling with me And it was like, yeah, that's good. I packed my AirPods. But
It'd be more
it's
alarming if it
funny.
stopped alerting you halfway through. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's kind of weird. It's not alerting me, and like we're halfway up to
Yeah.
my parents, and interesting. And then you realize, oh, I left it in Oregon.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up the AirTag and the truck thing because there was a report just this morning that an AirTag tracker helped investigators. I was reading this article from 9 to 5 Mac. It helped them locate $1.1 million in cash stolen from an armored truck.
That's pretty cool.
That was worth the $30 for whoever
Right.
bought it.
Now that's an investment idea.
Yeah. You could take that
How
as
to turn
investment advice.
$30 to millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. AirTags are an interesting, tricky device. Like the idea of tracking things is both good and bad. Good for like if you lost your keys, bad for if you're using it for malintent.
Using,
Um,
which they have. They absolutely have
oh
been
yeah,
used
but it's
poorly.
also revealed many other things like
Hmm.
DHL, like basically just putting people's luggage like in the middle of nowhere, or like basically storing it
Uh-huh.
in their facility and just leaving it there, or like you
Or you're
think
at
you're
the airline. We lost your bag. It's right here. I can
yeah,
see it.
and
It's
then it
back
just
there.
leads to companies being like, no air tags. It's like you can't stop that.
Yeah. And
But
it's a fascinating antitrust discussion because it was very much not Apple's idea at all. Even
mhm.
as an Apple sheep, I can acknowledge that. It was not an Apple concept. It was a. I don't even know if Tile was the original creator of it, but I think they at least pioneered the concept of small device that pings your phone to track. And then Tile is the one that came up with the whole network idea. If you're away from the phone, then it pings another Tile device and encryptedly and silently lets you know, hey, I'm over here. And Apple was just like, oh, that's clever. Let's do that with our devices because there's way more Apple devices than there are Tile devices.
Mhm.
So with the Find My network, it's way more precise than Tiles. And it's one of those tricky dilemmas where it's like, okay, they basically just stole the idea, but also their product is far more effective. And it's in the business of helping people track down their items. So wouldn't you want in a world where people lose keys or wallets? I'm sure AirTags and just like stories like that, helping people recover millions of dollars. This is a beneficial technology for humanity. Like, I'm not of the opinion that, well, it just shouldn't exist because someone used it poorly once, so we should just ban all use of Tiles, AirTag. None of it should exist. But it feels like it's it's one of those balance things, like you said. It's all about the right amount, and I'm sure Tile feels very cheated now. I don't. I wonder how they're doing. I haven't kept up with them.
Has anyone heard from them? Are they okay? Are they all right? Yeah, who knows? I think, yeah, the Appleification of like any device is always interesting to watch, like their
Hmm.
take on it, um, whether it's a tracker or it's
Hmm.
just any other type of tech that they've kind of come out with. But
Right.
what was I trying to get at? Oh, I think the idea around AirTags is a great idea in a society when people don't want to use them for malintent, or at least like any
Mm.
nefarious businesses. It's when they are used
Hmm.
it comes into question of the ethics of it, and like, is
Hmm.
this actually like a legal product and all that. And at this point, like
Yeah.
you can't really get out of the public's hands because it's everywhere, and you can't really shut them all off necessarily without shutting off the Find My network. And I don't think Apple would ever do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Probably not.
Even with the government saying you can't do that anymore, they'd be like, "We'll go to court then," because
Right.
they
It
like
probably
the
wouldn't pass.
yeah,
Enough people use them.
yeah, assuming that the courts aren't that corrupt and all that. But uh,
Hmm.
that's a whole different thing. But what was I trying to get at? It would be interesting to see like what the extreme is for AirTag technology in the future. Like if they were allowed to go wild with it instead of just like it's a little device that you can just put anywhere. Now like
Mm.
what does that look like cranked up to 11? Assuming that
Yeah.
no one uses it for malicious reasons. Like what is the extent that we could take this tech Like, is it the ability to like just know where objects are in your house without having to like take out your phone or anything like that, or even like
Mm,
I don't know, like be able to triangulate the position of some object based off of it not even having a tracker, but other objects having trackers and knowing that
yeah.
they've been near that object, whether it is a smart device or not, is something interesting
You
to
know what
me.
I envisioned? Maybe this is the plan for the headset, the
Mm.
Apple Reality. Is, you know how like in video games sometimes when there's like an item or something in another room
An
or behind
interactable
a
item,
wall
yeah.
and you can still see it, it's like highlighted a color through that wall as you're moving around. Like, you
Right.
know, in Portal, there's a portal behind that wall and it's got the little label for it. I was like, what if we had that in real life with the headset? I guess it's
Hmm.
not really real life, but you look around and because it knows spatially where your items are through the U1 chip or whatever and ultra wideband technology and Find Mine, whatever, you can look around. Where's my iPad? Where's my laptop? And it's just highlighted as in it's in the other room, and you can just kind of see it through the wall, like in a highlighted green or vibrant color. So you know it's over there, and you're like, oh, that's where I left it. So you don't even have to ping.
Hmm.
You're like, let me hear a sound, or the TV remote. That's probably a lot more common.
Oh
Like, where did the
yeah.
TV remote go?
You don't
Oh,
want to
down here.
fiddle through like the couch for like 15 minutes checking under
Yeah,
every single. I mean, it's not going to take you 15 minutes unless you've really lost it in some really big couch.
it happens. It happens to us quite a bit. Where you're like, where did we put it? Where did we leave it? And if in the future they can get that tech miniaturized in the form of glasses, where you're wearing it more passively. Oh, there's my AirPods. Oh, there's my remote. There's my phone, and it's
Yeah.
just kind of like through walls and stuff.
Especially
That'd
with
be
the
kind of
tech that
convenient.
the iPhone has, where like where you turn off, it's like it's actually not all the way turned off. You can still find it and all that. That would be nice for like
It
everything
loves
else.
telling you that every time.
Oh, every single time. It makes me feel a little bit weird because I'm like, no, I just want you to turn all the way off. It's like, I'm not
Turn off. I can
actually all
still
the way
find it.
off. I'm just like, oh, dear Lord. Okay.
I'm
But
just
like,
pretending to be off.
I'm thinking that'd be great for like just the simple reason of like just, or maybe not, what am I trying to say? Just like base minimum with like this
Hmm.
theoretical technology that we're talking about, like maybe just current gen products like the newest iPad, the
Yeah.
newest MacBook, and all that, like being able to
Hmm.
implement that update into all of them to where you can use Reality Pro or whatever to find it.
Yeah.
Even if
Sure.
like I don't know, let's just say you have kids and the kids just hide it away somewhere because that's what kids do. They just put things everywhere. It'd be nice to be able to somehow know where that is just based off of whether it has that software in it and is able to keep the power on in a low state or whatever. Or just like maybe you're kind of people like Nick who has two or three iPhone 5S's and all that. Uh, and it's like, where did I
Yeah.
put my third iPhone 5S or something like that? And you activate
Hmm.
Reality Pro. It's like, oh, it's actually in that cupboard underneath the socks next
Yeah.
to your hidden, I don't know.
Or you leave a wallet or something behind. Like you leave a
Yeah.
wallet in a restaurant, and instead of getting a notification your wallet's left behind, you just get like a little arrow appears in your field of view. Like,
Hmm.
look this way, and then there's the bubble over the restaurant. It's right here. And it gives you the distance. Or you could even have that with friends. Where are my friends located? Rather than
Hmm.
pull out the phone, where are they around this block? You just have a little bubble of their contact picture around the block.
I
Okay,
think
let's
that's
go
the
this way.
better like implementation or idea of Reality Pro, whether it's goggles or reality or was it
Hmm.
Apple Glass or whatever. That'd be
Yeah.
stuff that's actually useful and would be just like the most I don't know, I would utilize that a lot, or at least my wife would, because it seems like
Sure.
we're always leaving something somewhere else. And it's like, where did we put that receipt? Like, where
Yeah.
the heck did that thing go? We can't find it anywhere. I guess for me
Or
recently, it's
where'd
like,
I park the car?
well, I mean, easy for like people who have smart cars that at least you could track like Rivians and
Yeah, yeah.
Teslas, but like,
You
yeah,
could just chuck
especially
an AirTag in the car like you do.
that too. That helps as well. But
Hmm.
like if you forgot to, or you don't want to hear the ding 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 every
Right,
single time you're
right.
driving around, it would be nice just like it just knows where your car is based off of either where you parked it or your significant
Hmm.
other parked it or your family member parked it. Like it's got that. neural or not neural network, but at least that maybe it is neural network. It's some network of Internet of Things
Uh-huh.
that are connecting them together, so
Yeah.
that way that data is shared, hopefully for good intent and not for nefarious reasons
Right.
of someone hacking into that and knowing exactly where all your iPads or all your iPhones are stored for poor Nick. Um, I'm picking on Nick a bit
Yeah,
here.
Marquez's headset would have all these bubbles everywhere.
Oh, I would love to see. It would just be his whole office building would just be like glowing red or whatever. It was just
Yeah.
like, here's where five of the Mac Pros are. Here's where like all the
Hmm.
iPads are. Here's where all the MacBooks are and all that. It'd just be, oh dear Lord, that'd be way too much
Could
info.
put find my. He should put AirTags in his shoes.
That'd
You
be
could
interesting.
track your.
What do you
Where did
think
I
of that,
leave my
by the way?
shoes?
I don't think that can't. Well, I don't think that was information last week that we could talk about. But Marquez branching out into developing a product that's not tech related or even merch related per se. It's more of like a lifestyle related thing that is
Mm.
exclusive to a certain extent, because at least from my knowledge that's
Hmm.
what kind of the shoe life is you have people lining up in front of stores and there's a limited supply. You only have like five there, and then that's
Yeah.
it for like a month or whatever.
Hmm.
Like, do you think that was maybe not a wise decision, but a neat decision by Marquez? Or like, does that
Yeah.
seem like a Marquez move to you since you've
Yes,
talked with
it
the
does.
man of the hour, I guess?
Well, he's just, yeah. Well, he's just so cool. He's cooler than all of us. He's got the fashion down, and he's
He was
like
on
a
Sesame Street.
professional.
He's the coolest
Yeah,
guy ever.
exactly. I watched that too, and he's just got this swagger to him that I could never have. That like he's got the charisma, basically, is what I'm trying to say, to launch a shoe. And there are other tech YouTubers, even like John Morrison, that were really into shoe collecting and comparing and kind of buying and holding them as like assets and stuff. I don't personally, I'm not in it at all. Like, I haven't bought shoes for like 5 years, I think, and my shoes are falling apart.
Hmm.
I'm not one of those like fashion lifestyle guru guys. I'm kind of like, I found this at a thrift store for $1. So I'm not in that market, and I don't really understand the appeal, I suppose. But probably financially, it was a very wise decision on his part. And as you're kind of building more of a brand, it probably makes sense to kind of get into more of that. He also sold wallets that I think did really well.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of big YouTubers like that have a lot more to gain from, I think, the merch industry. If you have insane volume like they do, you can you can sell a lot at pretty high margin. So
So it
I
stands
I
to
think
reason that we shouldn't expect a Talos of Shoe to launch anytime soon.
no, not in the not in the near or far future.
Mm,
Just not in the future. Period.
near,
But
far, wherever you are.
wherever we are, I'm not invested in that, and I don't really have any interest in getting into that space. But also, it's worth mentioning that Marquez's videos are far higher budget than mine. So not just in the camera work or in the $40,000 iPhones you have to unbox. Uh, just the employees are probably one of his biggest expenses, if not the biggest expenses, and his office building, all of that costs probably tens of thousands of dollars a month. So if his site or his merch or his channel is not bringing in a certain amount, they they have to rethink their strategy a lot, because their overhead is so high. So that's why I think there's a bit more motivation for him to diversify, especially during these times of year when the tech news is so dry.
Mhm.
I think everyone's kind of experiencing that, and it's like he doesn't even really have that much leaks or rumors to fall back on. I don't envy him, because he's at such a high position in tech YouTube that when he makes a video, people have very high expectations because of the quality and how good he is at summarizing topics and making it interesting and captivating. Very, very challenging position he's in, and I have a lot of respect for it. But because of that overhead of the business and everything, it likely makes a lot of sense to be like, maybe we should focus on more than just ad revenue or more than just I don't know what else he does, channel memberships or sponsorships. He does sponsors from time to time. So they want to not put all their eggs in one basket, whereas I'm a relatively much smaller channel, rinky dink, and just throwing up whatever videos that come to mind, and mine are not very high budget by any means, and very simple and very fast food oriented. I put it. It's like a assembly line approach to making YouTube videos. It's like I'm gonna make so many of these. I can't put too much time or thought into them, so there's probably some mistakes or some cringy skit, whatever you want to call it. So I don't need to diversify as much because the channel can dip a lot with bad news or no news, and I'll be okay. I'm not worried about it. So
Sure.
it's an interesting direction for him to go on, but kind of gives us all more things to think about in regards to the tech YouTube space. Like yesterday, for the first time in a long time, I talked about an Android phone.
Right. I was
Which
very
has been a
surprised
while.
by it. Also, it piqued my interest as well when I saw the news online that the fact that
Uh-huh.
the rumors were true and Google is
Uh-huh.
making a foldable phone, or I guess device. We're not too sure what it's going to be. I think it is. Well, I think many people are assuming, and it probably is a foldable phone that turns
Yeah.
into a tablet and all that, which will be interesting to see if
Uh-huh.
it runs Chrome OS and all that, or if it's just
Ooh,
Android but
I don't know.
expanded or extended and all that.
That would be my guess. I would think Android for that size, even unfolded, it's still pretty small. But I think you have more interest in folding tech than I do.
I so I used to think it was a gimmick at first. I'm like, why would
Uh-huh.
anyone buy this? But after going kind of back in my brain with like how phones have evolved over time, it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there is kind of like that nice uh, compactability of a device in your pocket, but then also having that utility of a smartphone of today's tech
Mm-hmm.
being there. People like that, and it's maybe not a huge ton of people, but I believe the growth for this type of tech is rising. At least
Okay.
it's accelerating in some manner, and so it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense for Google to get their slice of the cake that Samsung and uh, Huawei, whatever their name is, and
Huawei,
Oppo
Oppo,
and all
yeah.
that. It it makes
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer, yeah, it explodes just like the Galaxy Notes. Um,
There you go.
but
That's good.
it only makes sense for Google to jump in as well and figure it out and try it out. It's probably the one foldable that I'm most interested in. Like I used to,
Okay.
I
Because
think
you
I've
had a
mentioned.
Pixel.
Yeah, well, I've had a Samsung as well. It's just
Okay.
I think my time with my Pixel was a very, very pleasant time. It was a very great phone. I loved the ownership of it, the usability of it, the utility of it. It was a great phone, and I loved the design and everything. So seeing Google make a foldable, it's like, okay, that's something that it's kind of hard now because I'm so integrated into the whole Apple ecosystem. It's like, why would I jump out of it? But it is the
Yeah.
one foldable that I'd be like, yeah, like I would probably try that out if my iPhone was giving me a whole bunch of flack. Uh,
Yeah.
but it'd be kind of hard because at this point it's just everything is Apple at this point. The laptop is
Right.
Apple. The tablet is
Mm-hmm.
Apple. The phone is
I'm right
Apple.
there with you.
The
That's
bank
why I'm
account.
like, oh yeah, even my money. I was thinking about that recently. I was like, if I did switch to Android, I could get a Pixel Watch or something and try to review what's outside the ecosystem. And I'm just brainstorming because I think the tech news is so dry. I'm like, we can't rule out that many subjects anymore when people say talk about this or talk about that. I'm like, I need to consider all opportunities when the news is getting this stale, because I also, some people consider it a drought. I think this is kind of the new normal. I think it's going to get worse, not better. There will be certain times of year where there's new tech and it gets exciting. Like, okay, iPhone has USB-C, and then everyone's watching videos on it and talking about it. But then we'll go back to this for long stretches of the year where it's just like, okay, now what do we talk about? So I'm trying to be more open-minded towards tech content and I just had kind of ruled out talking about Android for a while because I personally am not that interested in it because I'm happy with my ecosystem. And my logic of it was we should talk about the iPhone, iPhone 14's greatest competition, which the iPhone 14's greatest competition is not Android. It's last year's iPhone. That's what Apple's competing with. It's not so much people, should I buy an Android? Should I buy an iPhone? It's, should I upgrade? That's what I think more, at least in the US, iOS, I think, has the dominant market share. So I feel like that's more relevant to talk about. Should you get the new iPhone or should you go with an older one? But even that subject I discovered is like, it's kind of limited. You can't you can't do that indefinitely because there's only so many old iPhones to talk about. You go too old, there's no software support and practically doesn't work with a bunch of apps people need. So there's that thin kind of margin of phones like this, which are like, they're old and you can get them for cheap and they're still getting software support, but it's a battle of, are those compromises worth the extra money? Should you put up with a worse display or a worse camera? And that seems to perform pretty well whenever I switch phones. People
Again,
are interested.
which we'll touch on later. But I guess
Okay.
at least with this revelation that you can't really filter out Androids anymore, does this mean that you're going to be a little bit more open to reviewing Androids in person, like actually buying
Maybe.
like the Pixel Fold or whatever they want to call it, and then reviewing it for like a month or something like that, and then returning it?
It's possible. I'm still kind of weighing the options. Like the video I posted yesterday was kind of a test because I can't honestly remember the last time I talked about an Android phone. Or if I did, it was kind of in an Apple way, which I'm
Right.
still doing a little bit because I know my channel is obviously very Apple centric. That's clearly 98% of the videos is Apple related subjects because I just think that's what most of us are buying and that's what most people are interested in. Android field is kind of more techy, I think. It's more geeky and there's a lot more channels diving into the nitty-gritty details and there's honestly more YouTubers that are genuinely interested in those nitty-gritty details. So I'm like, the people that are interested should be talking about that. I'm not that interested, so I'm not trying to force interest. But if I can provide the Apple sheep's perspective on so-and-so Android phone, maybe the Android community can find that a little bit valuable. So what I mean by testing it was I did a Pixel Fold video yesterday and I wanted to see how it performed. Like, what are the analytics on it? If there's a lot of interest, if people say there's value in this, I want to watch more videos about Drew's thoughts on Android, then I feel motivated to do more because sure, I'm like mildly curious. I'm probably more curious than like my wife or my dad is. Like,
Right.
how is Google doing with the Tensor chip and how are they handling their displays and how's their hardware doing? I'm like a little bit curious because I'm just a bit more of a techie person. But even though I'm not that interested in like switching per se for my own personal needs, I don't think it's necessary. But trying to find ways to make entertaining, informative, educational content with the channel I have. That's kind of the battle. And the video's performing pretty good. It actually performed better than I thought it would. I expected it to be on my YouTube dashboard. I was expecting it to be like 10 of 10 or 9 of 10, like performance wise, because I was like, uh-oh, people are going to expect iPhone news or Apple Watch this and that. And now I'm talking about Google. But it actually ended up being like 5 of 10, and it's kind of found a little uptick. It's discovery wise reaching audience. It's reaching viewers that don't normally watch the channel, so it resulted in kind of
Good.
a spike in interest. So I was like, okay, maybe this is just a one off because Google announced it. So I thought maybe it's different from. Obviously, there was tons of Pixel Fold rumors and leaks, but I didn't feel like talking about those. But I'm
Sure.
like, no, this isn't really a leak. This is Google
Straight
announcing
from the
something.
mouth.
So this is actual like reality we're talking about. We don't have to be like the rumors are saying such and such because I'm kind of sick of that already.
Sure.
But I do think if I do come back to it, which I'm weighing out options based on the lack of news to talk about. If I do go back to Android, I think I want to take a more budget focused mindset towards it, kind of like how I've done that with iPhones, and that seems to have gone over pretty well. because you can buy the new iPhone and talk about the new iPhone for a couple weeks, and then everyone kind of is over it. No one really cares. But if you're reviewing older iPhones and talking about, hey, look at the prices on eBay or Amazon, look at what you can get these for, that's, I think, a bit more timeless. People come back to that video
Sure.
a year later, months later, and they go, oh, okay. It's not so much talking about the features, because the features have existed, but it's talking about the value and what you're getting, and what it enables versus what's kind of interesting from my switcheroo with Sims and everything is iPhones used to just have like newer chip, A15, A16, now we'll get A17 chip. And every year it was always just like, okay, it's faster. Great, whatever. It's like, what's the big deal? What's funny is that once you start reviewing the 5-year-old iPhones or 3-year-old iPhones or longer, that's when the chip differences actually start to make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
At least with iOS support, the big motivation for me to switch away from the 10 was like, oh, this doesn't get live text, which I actually use for these time codes in the podcast. And when I'm shipping items or stuff, I use it for the tracking number. I was like, I actually kind of like live text, and I kind of miss not having it. Or I like subject lift. I use that for my thumbnails, and this phone doesn't have it, but this phone does. And those kinds of software differences don't come up that much when you're reviewing the new iPhone every year, because it's just, oh, it's fast. It's faster now. It's so fast. But once you dive into the older stuff, it's like, no, there's actually quite a few advantages now to the A13 chip versus the A11. Whereas when the A13 chip was brand new, practically they're the same chip for all intents and purposes. So back when I was reviewing Androids, it was that traditional tech YouTube mindset of just buy the new one when it comes out. Here's the new phone. Here's all its features. Yeah, it's great. I don't like it. Send it back. Whatever. But if we get into more like, let's review an Android phone from a year ago or 2 years ago, see how it's aging in today's world. How's that chip holding up? And also, where's the good deals? Where's like the great values? Because I honestly don't think there's that much value in just buying an old Android phone and being like, this sucks. It's cheap and I don't like it. It doesn't work. That's okay. I guess it's kind of helpful to tell people, like, don't buy that phone. Okay.
It'll get you money at the end of the day, but was it actually a useful video for the masses
right.
to look at?
Yeah.
I guess kind of just compare it to their own preferences, right? And then from there, be like, whether they choose to believe your opinion or not, and whether they take it to heart or not, is debatable. But I think at least considering Google as like maybe your entry point into reviewing Androids is maybe not a bad idea, because I think they're the closest to Apple, or an Apple-esque mentality, compared
I'd
to
agree.
Samsung or Oppo or any other company, Razer or anything like that.
Right.
Seems like those are a little bit more on the other side of the scale of like doing it just for like tech's sake. Where Google's like, we'll get to it. We're more focused on software, but we'll get to that hardware soon. And that's kind of like Apple's mentality as well. But they're more, they have their own design language and their own what's it called? Their own traditions that they kind of follow, and to maybe not break that tradition, but mold that tradition into excusing themselves into a whole new tech branch takes time. So at least with like going the Google route, you've got people who are interested in Android who are checking you out, and they're like, oh, cool. This is like kind of an Apple sheep's mentality on it, if you're still considered an Apple sheep. But also at the same time, it opens up the doors for those who have been stuck in the walled garden and don't know any better, of like, they just view outside of the walled garden that Apple has made as the Badlands, where it's actually like, no, it's not bad at all per se. Like, there's a lot of great options out there. It's just, here's what you're going to be either sacrificing, or like, here's what you'll be gaining from leaving that nice cyber garden that they've made, and to this kind of, maybe not, I wouldn't say Mad Max, but a little bit more freer approach to technology that Google approaches it with, or even more into the Mad Max realm with what Samsung does, because they throw all the ideas at the wall. They throw the spears, they throw the grenades at it, and whatever, it kind of turns into some
Yeah.
Picasso painting. They're like, that we're doing that. And you're like, you want to put a camera
Yeah.
on the side of the phone? They're like, yes, this is exactly what we need to do.
Yes.
It's like okay,
That's
cool.
true. I still have the mindset that it's pretty much Badlands outside of the walled garden, but I'm willing to acknowledge that I haven't stepped outside the garden in a long time.
Sure.
Even in the video sense, I haven't even like looked. I haven't even been following it that closely. So, um, as the garden has less and less fruit to bear,
Sure.
you might want to take a little field trip from time to time. Be like, okay, what's it like on the other side? And I don't think it'll sway me personally, especially with this whole Apple Card and Apple Savings account thing.
Sure.
And the software support definitely seems to last longer um, with the iPhones than it does the Androids. But I was looking around on the Pixel website uh, this morning, and it was like Pixel's promising 5 years of updates. So, what does that actually look like? What does that translate to? But the other thing that Google is my first choice is because I've had decent Samsung experiences in the past, but I think a recurring theme in all of my Samsung reviews is always the phone feels like it's fighting over each other between Samsung skin with one UI or whatever trying to fight with Android. So now you need a Samsung account, but you also need a Google account. And there's certain apps that are Samsung made and certain apps that are Google made. And it will ask you when you're using the phone, which app do you want to use, the Google one or the
Oh,
Samsung one.
jeez.
And what I like about Apple is that first party, like we design the hardware, we design the software, we have complete control. So it's at least a singular vision. And it's not just that like Google kind of has a similar design aesthetic. You know, they have 3 phones on their website right now. Samsung has 500. But
Wow.
the other thing is I'm already partially into the Google ecosystem quite a bit. Like I think most of us are. I've got the YouTube Premium. I'm using YouTube Music. I'm paid through Google AdSense. I use Gmail. Gmail's my Apple and everything. So there's already integration going on. It's like Apple hardware, but using a lot of Google services. Like I watch more YouTube than anything. So knowing that, okay, I'm just going with a company that is going to require an account that I'm already using all the time and is going to have YouTube Music and YouTube pre-installed. You know, it's going to have apps that I already take advantage of, and we use Google Drive to share our files for the podcast and everything. So I feel like if I were to step out, that would be the easiest transition
Hmm.
to review something else. But I want to see like where the good deals are. Basically, I'd like to document where's a decent hardware for the money because I'm struggling. I'm curious to see how they do the Pixel Fold, of course, but I'm still struggling to really figure out like I, I can't justify anyone in modern day to be spending more than $1,000 on a phone. It's
It
very
is
hard to
a growing
justify.
market, though. I think was it one report said it was like year over year 75% adoption rate or something like that upon its existing population of users. Which, if the
Mm,
existing population of users is like 1,000, then it's like all right,
hmm
add multiply that by 75%, then add that to it. It's like all right, well, 1,075 or whatever, 1,750. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
You only grew like that much, but like, I would still say how I've kind of justified it in my brain is it's not equal to percent or per chance per se is what I'm trying to say.
Say, yeah.
Um, but I kind of view it as like the hybrid cars entering the market when they first did. Like people
hmm
weren't really too interested in it. It's like why we have the manual car, like the manual car and the automatic, that's all we need. Why do we need this hybrid? It doesn't make sense versus
Uh-huh.
like having in the phone realm, having the smartphone with its different sizes and that's it. We've got the Pro, we've got the regular iPhone. Why would we need anything else? Not
Right.
saying that Apple will make a fold. It doesn't make sense to me why they would. It's not in their company culture. They never made a foldable phone, but I guess neither did Google, or did they? No, they didn't really. I don't
I
think
don't
they
think
ever
so.
did.
No.
So it is branching out on Google's end, but for Apple to do it as well, I'm like, I don't think Apple would. But um,
Well, and Apple doesn't have much of a tablet. I mean, sorry, Google doesn't have much of a
I
tablet
was gonna say, excuse me.
industry. Well,
What is
I should
this?
agree. Apple doesn't have much of a tablet business. Because they don't do anything with iPad OS. But Google's not worried about cannibalizing tablet sales or anything with the folding phone. Apple
Sure.
probably, I don't think they need to worry about that because I don't think a folding iPhone would cannibalize tablets. But at the same time, I don't think an iPad with Mac OS would cannibalize Mac sales. But that's probably
I can
still
already think of a
a
really good
concern.
skit you can make with the Google Fold if you review it.
Yeah.
Like, I think you had a recurring, or you had one that I laughed at where you're like acting as Google, like, all right, we made a tablet, it's like 2015 or whatever, like it's gonna be great,
Uh
and
huh.
then 2017, all right, we're introducing a new tablet. This one's gonna be better. And then 2020, all right,
Right.
here's a new tablet. Just like
For
that,
real. This
them
time,
continuing to
we mean
try,
it.
and now you can be like, well, here's a phone, but it's also a tablet and all that. I think something like that would go over pretty well. I would enjoy that from my own benefit.
Would it
But
have a calculator?
as a Google tablet,
No, if
or
Apple made a folding
if
iPhone,
Apple
would it
made a,
run iOS or iPad
I
OS?
think, see, that's the thing. Why another uh, pebble in the gear system that Apple operates on, it doesn't make sense, or like it just doesn't compute for like them to make a
Yeah.
folding iPhone to me because they already have iPads, and it doesn't make sense to have
Uh
two
huh.
different OSs on an iPhone when iOS in their eyes works perfectly fine, and the same with iPad OS. Like it doesn't make sense to mush the two together because they already in their own perspective fields
Uh huh.
make sense in their own realms, even if iPad is severely uh their iPad OS is severely terrible compared to iOS as they are today, in
Mm-hmm.
2023. But um, I'm sure other cases can be made of like, well, this is how you kind of blend the two together, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually it all kind of just becomes either all iOS or some new OS system name. But I don't think it really goes down to that because you
Fold
can't.
OS.
Oh dear, no, 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 no! Stop! No, 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 no!
Crease
Wait, wait, wait,
OS.
wait, wait, wait!
Wait. No, my issue with foldables is not so much the pricing or the hardware and the software I
Hmm.
take issue with, but my biggest issue is more so just it. To me, it doesn't solve that much of a problem. Like when I reviewed the Flip and the Fold, I didn't find unfolded that much more functionality or that much more use case. Like in theory, I get the concept of okay, bigger when you need it, smaller when you put it in your pocket, but because of how big folding phones are, to me, it doesn't unlock that much more. They're usually awkward aspect ratios,
Right.
and the screen is so split when you're doing multitasking that it's like you can't really do that much more than you could with the normal, just big 6.7-inch phone anyway. I'm like, I didn't find it helpful um, for its intended purpose, which is, and that's on top of, yeah, it's expensive, and yeah, there's a crease, and yeah, there's build concerns, but I don't. I've seen Snazzy Labs throw a Z Flip around a million times and drop it and pick it up, and I really don't think the hardware is the issue. It was at the beginning when they started shipping them and all the
I'm
screens
still
kept.
concerned about sand and all that, whether it's pocket sand or
Yeah,
actual beach sand, getting into these folding phones, because
sure,
that's something that I find. Like I go to the beach and sometimes I bring the phone, and it's like at
sure,
least this. Well, it's my camera right now, so I can't pick it up. But at least
yeah,
it's like there's no exposed mechanisms where like
right.
with how folds are today, their mechanisms
That's
are
a
at least
concern,
you can basically peel underneath the screen if you wanted to easily.
right?
Like it's not that hard versus like something like a
True,
Duo. It's segmented, so it just seems like two phones kind of hinged together. But at least like that
sure,
hinge is a little bit more uh
structural.
well no well structural, but it's also a little bit more contained in itself. I'm forgetting the I'm blanking on a whole bunch of words today, but it doesn't allow contaminants to come in as much.
Yes,
So
right.
I prefer that, but there's no it's kind of hard to find a nice Venn diagram intersection between having like a
Mm-hmm.
plasticky feeling screen that kind of just folds decently, but after like a billion folds it dies because it's been folded a
Sure.
billion times. Uh, versus
It's a
like,
concern.
yeah, versus a hinge. So I feel like there's still a whole lot of room to grow, which is then I think what kind of makes me believe in the folding and flipping phones today, because it's like this is still a new industry, and I
Mm-hmm.
still think there's much more room to grow and expand into technology wise or material science wise, uh, to just see how far it goes to where like you can make it feel like an iPhone on the screen and also
Mm-hmm.
feel as robust as an iPhone if you drop it or anything like that, and you have no problem with it at that point versus like what they are today where it's like you still have to be a little bit careful with it.
Yeah. I want Apple to make a folding phone, not because I want a folding phone or because I think it would be good or like fix a problem,
Sure.
but just because it would be nice for Apple to break from the norm. And they seem very safe and very calculated these days. Like Apple doesn't like straying too far from the formula. Just like, I'll just give more of what people already have, just refine it, just a little bit faster chip, a little bit better battery life, and it's just refinement.
Yellow.
Yellow, yeah, that's the big thing. But it'd be nice to see their take on it. I think it would just be kind of refreshing, even though I don't think I would buy it or use it. It would just be kind of neat to see their take on it. And I also think they would probably sell the best because Apple dominates the premium smartphone space. When it comes to phones that are over $800, it's like 80% iOS.
Hmm.
Android dominates the sub $800 space, but iOS is where most people are comfortable spending big money, and foldables are more expensive in general. So Apple could convince more people to buy a foldable than Samsung or Google ever could, in my head. And
Sure.
I also think Apple gets software better than anybody, especially when it comes to iPhones. So I think they would probably have the best software implementation for a foldable. And they have the whole iPad OS App Store, which is way more plentiful than the Play Store in how they're optimized for tablets. So I think they would probably get it better than anyone, but I still am not convinced that it would like outsell normal phones. But it would be a passionate niche of the market, I think, that of people that just like how there's people that spend get the 1 terabyte iPhone. Not a lot of people do it, but they exist and they're willing to drop, as we've seen already, $1,500, $1,600 on that phone,
Sure.
because they use their phone a lot and it's in their budget, so they can swing it. So in the same way, I think foldables could be that. Like, not a lot of people could justify it because an Apple Fold would probably be like 2,000 or 2,500 bucks. Someone commented that yesterday. They were like, if Apple was doing this, it would be $2,500. And I replied, and it would outsell every other foldable
I
still.
think so. It come at, I mean, it just basically echo what's going on right now with regular smartphones, comparing
Mm-hmm.
the
Right.
Samsung 22, 23, um,
Uh-huh. The
along
Ultra
with, yeah, the Ultra, along with the Pixel 6, 7. What number are we at now?
Pro.
Pro,
7
whatever it is.
Pro now.
Oh, jeez. As you can tell, I haven't really been paying attention.
Yeah,
And
neither of
then,
us have.
yeah, but then just bringing that up to the folding market, it's like, all right, well, yeah, the Google one's going to be a little bit pricier than the Samsung one, um, but the Apple one would be a little bit more expensive than the Google one, and so
Apple's the most expensive.
it's always the most expensive. But I'd say
Uh-huh.
you get a lot for whatever that product is. Even if it's an iPad, I still think you get a lot bang for the buck in regards to what you paid for, um,
Mm.
with all the utilities that Apple offers and
Mm-hmm.
just the ecosystem itself, the way
Right.
it integrates with,
Compatibility.
yeah. The
Mm-hmm.
more you invest into it, I guess the more benefit you get. Where I don't really see that too much with other companies, but I guess I also haven't dumped everything into a single company before, because before this Appleification of myself, uh,
I
I
think
went,
Apple makes it really easy.
Oh, they
to
make it
dump
easy.
everything.
But like I had like a Microsoft Surface, but I had a
Yeah,
Pixel phone, and then I had a
right.
Fitbit watch, and then
Sure.
uh
But to be fair, like there wasn't a Surface phone really when you had your Surface Pro that you could have gotten in tandem with it, and there wasn't a Pixel two-in-one tablet that could do your school stuff. Like there, most of those non-Apple big tech companies prioritize one sector really hard
sure.
and then kind of neglect all the rest, which is why I think Apple's so good at getting you in the ecosystem because everything is just so elegantly compatible. Just like the continuity camera like you're using right now. I don't even think there's an alternative to that in the Samsung world or the Google world. It's just like,
There's
oh, you
probably
open
not.
an app and well, you got to download some third party app and they're going to ask for your email and your password and then you have to download that app on the
You
computer
don't know if
and then
they're
you
looking
plug them
through that
in.
as well. They could be just
Yeah.
harvesting all that
Whereas
data
with
for their
the
own.
iPhone, you literally just open FaceTime and it's like, do you want to use your phone? Okay, yes. Boom. Now it's working wirelessly. You can move it like 30 feet away from the computer and it's still working. So
I'm glad
it's,
that you brought that up. I had it all the way on the other side of the house, and I had the
yeah,
laptop in here. I'm like, let me just boot up and make sure everything's good before the podcast. And then
yeah.
immediately brought up the camera feed, and it's just gray. I'm like, that's weird. Why is it gray? It's usually black if like there's no camera. I'm like, oh, it
yeah.
connected to my phone on the other side of the house. That's funny. It's like face down. So I'm like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah, that
it's
happened
pretty
to
good
me too.
range.
When I open OBS, it wants to use my SE camera, but yeah, I think Google in terms of IP and ownership is in the best position to make a competing ecosystem because
Sure.
like we've talked about before, it's really hard to get people to switch platforms,
Hmm.
both for, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Um, Samsung, even if they tried to come up with their own custom, they used to have one I think called like Tizen OS, or if they did Galaxy OS, like we're gonna move away from Android, wouldn't go over well. You couldn't get people to do it, so they have to result to this hybrid approach of, okay, our laptops have to use Windows, but we put our own One UI skin on it, and then our phones use Android, and we put our One UI skin. So you get this weird hybrid mix. Samsung is a manufacturer first. That's how I look at them. They manufacture iPhone displays and they manufacture NANDs and SSDs. And I bet, I don't know for sure, but I'm fairly confident the Pixel Fold is using Samsung hardware. Samsung's probably the one manufacturing it.
Probably, and the same thing would
Um,
happen with Apple as well, because they'd
yeah,
just be like,
absolutely.
can we use this hinge design, or like maybe not the design, but
Yeah.
like some
Can
patent
you make
technology.
this at scale
Yeah,
for
right.
us? That's what they do. And Samsung, I don't look at as a design company first. I look at them as like they're a manufacturer that gets into designs, whereas Apple is a design company, software company first, and then they outsource all their manufacturing. And then I look at Google, they're a search company first that is trying to get more into hardware sales. And I'll give them credit. The Pixel has lasted a lot longer than most of their other projects. Usually, Google loves to start things and then kill them off, and then start things and then kill them off all the time. And the Pixel's made it quite a while now. Made it
Yeah,
longer than the Nexus phones.
it's as
Um,
promising as Gmail maybe at this point.
yeah, maybe it'll stick around. Well, I think their sales have upticked since they started doing the A series
All right,
and going more affordable.
A for affordable.
So that's right. And they are making their own silicon now. It's not necessarily better than Apple silicon, but it's a step in the right direction of like more vertical integration and stuff. So I feel like with the right execution and the right leadership, they could probably make something that rivals Apple's ecosystem. But
Sure,
that's where Google always falls short to me is the execution and the leadership decisions never follow through the way
sure.
Apple's do because Apple will release something and even if it doesn't do very well they'll continue supporting it and updating it for years to come like the original HomePod. Like no one expected that to get a revival and they're like, no, we're gonna keep doing this. It's like, okay. um,
Welcome back, I guess.
yeah. Yeah, like
But
no,
yeah,
we're gonna keep trying, we're gonna stick with it. So
I think
yeah,
that's
I
I those comments make me think you covering Google at least as like your step back into the Android realm is a good
mhm.
idea. because you have opinions. It's close to Apple. There's Apple-esque things, and of course, most of the videos will all boil down to if they were just a little bit more like Apple and did this,
Yeah.
it'd be a surefire win. But they're not, so
You're so close. Yeah.
yeah, which will be kind of annoying. But I think at least they're as close to the realm with like what Apple does that you'll be able to apply a lot of the current tactics that you use with your videos to Google, and it won't be too
Hmm.
different, but you'll still have a nice discussion with yourself and garner that in the comments with your audience to be able to have a nice beneficial just experience of
Hmm.
15 or like 7 to 15 minutes of here's what I
Yeah.
think. Um,
Hmm.
but I don't know. But to kind of switch
It
gears,
could be
you brought
interesting.
it up
Sure.
before. You now have a new phone, in which I kind of foresaw it coming, but at the same time, it still brought me by surprise because it was either going to be the SE2 that is your wife's, or an 11 that you'd find on eBay for a really good price. But you decided to go and steal your wife's phone, and I think I watched
Yes.
some of the video. I don't think I caught all of it. What is she rocking now? Before we jump into all the whys and hows and what's and wheres of the SE2, what is she rocking?
Basically, a friend of ours wanted to get rid of their iPhone 11 and they wouldn't accept any money for it.
Oh.
They were just like, "No, I don't need to sell it. It's fine. Just take it." They were and I was like, "Are you sure? That's a lot." Like in my opinion, that's very generous for you to just give someone your old phone. They switched to the 14 Pro. That's why I have the box for the 14 Pro. They gave
Nice.
me that box too cuz they're like, "I don't care. I don't need it." And they were like, "If you don't take this phone, it is just going to sit on my desk for years and do nothing. Just take it." And Louise had been on the same phone for the past over 3 years now. And I was like, honey, you deserve the upgrade. And I spend a lot of time at my desk and in the car, whatever, with wireless chargers around. So I wasn't too worried about battery life. But my wife tends to be away from chargers for extended periods. So I was like, you should take the 11. She offered it to me at several points. She was just like, don't you want the 11? You could have night mode or the ultra wide or whatever. And I was just like, no, no, don't worry. As long as one of us has that good camera, that works out for me because we're always together. So if we're at a family event or the sky is beautiful or we want to take a picture, just be like, use your phone. I don't need to have. We don't both need to have the same features essentially. And I was like, um, I'm still addicted to my iPhone 10. I'm using it all the time, and this was. Most people, I think, would consider it a side grade. It's not necessarily an upgrade, but it's also not really a downgrade. Um, to me, this was a more functional side grade because I compromise on the display. The display is smaller, the display is worse, and it feels more crammed. But it's a compromise on the consumer standpoint of the phone. Like it's worse for media, it's worse for entertainment, but it's better for my job because it has the live text, it has subject lift, it has continuity camera, and I use those features. And the iPhone 10 doesn't, and also, there's a decent chance iOS 17 is going to come out and have a bunch of things that the iPhone 10 can't do. So, if I'm going to review iOS updates and stuff, it's more likely this phone will support some of those new features. I don't know for sure if it will or not, but by the time iOS 17 launches, there's a good the beta launches and everything. There's a good chance I will be out of the country. So I don't want to find out what the 10 can't do when I'm away from home and I can't access the same iPhones that I can here. So I figured I'd be better off just like making sure I have the chip at least to support it. And to me, it felt more responsible. It's like this helps me get work done, and it also makes social media and watching videos more annoying. So like benefit the productivity, penalize the time wasting apps, or penalize the media consumption. So it felt like a responsible thing to do. And also, I wanted to review an iPhone with battery health below 80%.
Sure.
So now I do. It's telling me to service it. And so far, there's no problems. I
You
haven't
have no
noticed any
plans to
issues.
service it or anything like that? You're
If
just
it
gonna.
gets bad, I'll service it and I can
Well, what do you
document that
consider
experience.
bad?
But
Like it going below 60 then? Or.
I don't really care so much about the number. I care more about like what like you were experiencing issues with your 11 Pro where you were like
Mhm.
it was freezing up, it was crashing, it was becoming unresponsive. If I have that experience, I can talk about it and be like, "Okay, this is what you want to look out for," and then you can get the battery replaced. And something else that I thought should be documented is how does it compare afterwards? Is it like noticeably better, or did it only kind of fix it but not completely fix it? Because I've seen some people in my comments say I got my battery replaced and it didn't fix all the problems it was having. So if that's the truth, I think it's worth talking about because there were people saying that to you on the podcast when you had your 11 Pro.
Mhm.
You were like, "Oh, the battery's just deteriorated and the phone's freezing up," and there were people in the comments saying, "Oh, if you just fix the battery, it'll be good as new." And I'm like, I don't know if that's entirely true. It might be kind of true for certain use cases. So my iPhone 10 was still at 83% battery health, and after 3 months of usage, it was still at like only 1% down. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to wait like a year before this battery health gets below 80, and then start seeing if it has any negative side effects.
Sure.
Um, so I'm kind of curious to see what happens with this phone long term, but I don't have some like extended game plan like after 1 year I will switch to this or after the next 3 months then I will switch to I don't know. I'm just playing it by ear. And
Mhm.
that iPhone 11 entered the picture completely unexpected and at no additional charge, so we didn't really know. And it felt weird because it was a gift from our friends. We were like, we don't want to sell it. That would be kind of awkward, right? Here,
Right.
have this old phone. Cool. Money. No. Now we made a profit off of you. That felt a little wrong.
A little bit too capitalist.
A little too capitalist. And Louise is always in favor of like, I'll upgrade if it doesn't cost us anything.
Sure.
um, so that was
Cool.
one of those rare opportunities. So
You showed the
I'll
screen earlier, and it looked like it had
yeah.
I think the gesture bar or something like that. So, does it just assume with the OS that there's no
Really?
home button?
No, there's no gesture bar.
Oh, I could have
I
sworn
don't
I
know
thought
what
I
you
saw a
saw.
bar on the bottom. Oh, it's the text.
Maybe that's what
Okay.
you saw.
My
Press
my poor
home. So I'm
eyes.
I'm back to a home button again. It's weird.
Wow. And there's no 3D touch, correct?
No, they removed that. That was interesting because when this came out, the iPhone 8 had 3D touch, which looked almost identical to this. But
Hmm.
then the SE2 came out, which was basically an iPhone 8 with a new chip, but it didn't have the 3D touch. So that was like the big final blow, essentially. That was when they kind of killed it off.
Has that been something that
Um,
you've been missing for the past, I think, week that you've had it, I guess, or few days?
not a lot because I was trying to use 3D touch more on the iPhone 10, but I think they changed iOS or something to not accommodate for it as much because I was still trying to push hard on the keyboard to activate the cursor, and a lot of the time it just didn't work. It would
Hmm.
just think I wanted to hold down the letter and access some accent or something.
Right.
So I don't know if they changed the activation formula for it, but I kept trying to 3D touch and it would just not activate. So I went back to using the space bar anyway. And the only other time where I appreciated having 3D touch was the little toggles on the lock screen for the flashlight and the camera. And this doesn't have that for whatever reason. On the home button iPhones, they don't put the toggles there. So,
Interesting. How do you turn on the? I guess you have to unlock it and then turn on the flashlight.
well, you can still control center flashlight. So
Oh,
it
okay.
takes a little bit longer, but yeah, it's a little awkward. But I use my watch as the flashlight most of the time
Sure.
anyway. And thankfully, there's only one way to activate the camera from the lock screen now instead of two, which always annoyed me. I was like, I'd
So it's
rather
a
there just
better
be.
experience then.
It's so much better. There's certain things that I will admit, even with the home button, are kind of nice. Like oftentimes for like a Twitter clip or a little cutaway shot in a video, I need to screen record a YouTube video,
Mhm.
and I don't have to crop the edges of that video when I'm done recording it because this is a 16 by 9 aspect ratio.
So it gets the
So when
whole
I
image.
screen record it, it's already 16 by 9, so I don't have to crop it. I can just drag it right in and it's the
Nice.
same as
Sounds like the
before.
SE2 has a lot of great features that have been forgotten about in the
Around.
future,
Yeah,
but
forgotten.
also
Yeah.
still has a whole bunch of things that should be upgraded. So Hmm.
I definitely like I can decipher the difference between this is something I enjoy more, but this is something I can live with. Like having the home button again, I'm reminded how much nicer it is to have gesture control. Like
Sure.
I still very much prefer swipe up to go home,
Yeah.
swipe up and hold for multitasking. This clicks a lot, and it's not super noisy, but when you're in a quiet room or like my wife is napping or something, you can hear it like, and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh yeah, I can't like quietly use the phone anymore. Like it's making all this noise. So from like a personal preference point of view, I would love to have a 14 Pro Max, and I'm sure I'll love the 15 Pro Max when I review that later. But from a I have a smartphone addiction problem, I need to control myself. I can live with this. Like it's not unbearable, but like it is worse. I can
I mean, it
acknowledge it
sounds
is a
like an
worse
upgrade
experience.
though compared to the 10. So,
In some ways, like when I
uh,
ran the poll, we got like 8,000 votes, I think, and 76% voted in favor of I would prefer a 10 over an SE2.
hmm.
Most of which was because of the display. People were like, a 5.8-inch OLED panel is way better than
Well, I think
a
that's something that
4.7
you've
inch.
hammered into your audience is like 120 hertz ProMotion. That's what I care about. Nothing
Yeah,
else matters.
that's true.
And now you're
That's
kind of going
true.
against that grain. You're going the opposite way of like, maybe I don't need that.
Hmm.
It's just like
I still,
little.
yeah, I still definitely prefer it, but you're right. I don't need it, and I think it's a good mindset to remind people of like you can make it work without it, and
Sure.
this is an upgrade in terms of work features like subject lift and continuity camera and live text, but downgrade in terms of entertainment. So that's I think what I need. I need to treat my phone more of a tool, less so of a entertainment device, which is what I was using it for. So
Sure.
like I spent way too much time on my phone. I still do. But
My
the
wife and I have
battery is
kind of
so
done the
bad.
opposite at this point. She now watches
Really?
Discovery Plus on her 12, and then
Oh,
we watch Disney Plus or whatever else on the iPad or the MacBook a little bit more, which has
there
been
you go.
interesting. It's been quite the opposite of what we kind of viewed our phones and tablets and computers as before, where we're like, oh, those are just
Yeah.
kind of accessories. Now it's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
these are more of like our entertainment centers and also communication centers that we're heavily
Right.
relying on. So it's like, oh, okay, well,
We use them a lot
yeah. So
for everything.
it's interesting how we're kind of going opposite ways now, where
Mm-hmm.
you're more focused on what I used to be in, but now I'm focused on more what you used to be in. So hmm,
Yeah, it's inversed.
it's a
That's
great
true.
perspective to kind of follow up with at least every week
Mm-hmm.
of like, huh, so Drew's now cutting that out. Interesting. I guess we'll
I
add
know.
this then.
I was like, everybody's gonna think I'm gonna switch phones now every couple months.
Maybe. I don't think that's a bad. I mean, you've got many phones to go through before you get to the current phone at that point. So I think at least if you're
I've
on,
kind of even decided like even if the iPhone 15 Ultra or whatever is perfect and it has the way better microphone quality and I decide I want one, like I want to upgrade to it, I wouldn't buy it new. I would still want to wait a few months to buy it used and try to
sure,
find one on sale, or even maybe it could be fun to do a video where we buy a broken one and pay to get it fixed and then talk about that experience and how much you save in that process or if it's worth doing, or
right.
it was like, okay, even if it's great and I love it, I probably won't buy it like brand new and just keep that one at full
You could
price.
almost time it perfectly with getting a, a Pixel Fold or something else.
Yeah.
So you could just review
Uh-huh.
that while waiting for the better phone to come back.
That's true. That's a
So
good point.
could be a decent
Yeah, we
timeline
gotta
plan.
juggle everything here, keep it interesting as the
Right.
tech all kind of matures and peaks. It's kind of weird, but
It's a struggle.
it's a fun challenge. It's not a struggle. It's
No,
it's just it's a fascinating dilemma, I guess. Where do you take it? How do you?
it's a beautiful train wreck.
Yeah. if all else fails, we have EV to talk about.
Right.
Much more stuff going on.
Definitely.
But any closing thoughts?
No, besides, I guess, well, okay, I do have a closing thought then. Uh,
Okay.
I am very excited about the Fold, as I mentioned previously from Google.
Okay.
Definitely
Next week we'll
reinvigorates.
have an event to talk about then.
Exactly. I think it's like on
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday or something like that. So right after
Yes.
we can, well, maybe not right after, like what you guys used to do with the Apple events, because it's been so long now.
Yeah.
Um, but probably, yeah, next week we'll probably talk about it more, and we'll
Yeah.
see whether my excitement is sustained,
Uh-huh.
increases, or
Uh-huh.
decreases substantially.
Yeah. I think the price maybe will affect that a lot.
Probably. It'd be hilarious if they start at $2,000 or more, because then it's like, oh, so that's what it
I think
costs.
it'll be lower than people think. I'm gonna predict like 16.99 is my guess.
Okay. I'll say 1999 then, and we'll see if
Wow.
it lands in the
Okay.
middle or below or up or above.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Should be
that's
fun.
that's a good prediction.
This was a good episode for Randy and Nick to not be free because they would just be rolling their eyes at any mention of Android.
But have you
They
heard
just
about
wouldn't
my
care.
family member converting over to the Apple ecosystem by using my
Right?
newborn son as hostage or
You
as
can only video call us if you have an iPhone.
family
Randy's the
member?
true sheep here.
They don't
He's
know
the
I'm
real.
using FaceTime on an Android right now somehow.
Wasn't Android supposed to get FaceTime
I feel
at
like they
some point?
were, but
What
I
happened to
haven't.
that?
I don't. I.
I
Why are
can't
you asking
remember.
me? I don't know. I had Android at some
Why are
point.
you asking? All right. Well, we'll catch you next week. Take care, all. Bye bye.
Bye.